Hi, everyone. It's Monday, May 5th. I'm Alyssa Johnson. I'm Chair of the Waterbury Select Board. I'm going to go ahead and call this regular meeting of the Waterbury Select Board to order Monday, May 5th at the Waterbury Fire Station and also on Zoom. Thank you all for coming out. I know we're very excited at our business. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda. Is this echo not working? Like, should we address this now before the meeting? Awesome. Checking with the room. So yes, first item of business is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion from someone on the select board?
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Awesome. Motion by Kane, second by Mike. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we've approved the agenda and everyone can see that our first item of business is the V-Trans public information presentation for the Waterbury Bridge number 36 project. So I will turn it over to our guests and visitors from V-Trans. Mike?
Is there any way to turn down that reverb on the?
Totally. I will work on tweaking that with perhaps Chief Dillon. Thank you. But yes, invite our V-Trans representatives up.
Hi,
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Schinzel. I am the Public Information Consultant with V-Trans. We are going to be giving you an overview today of the Waterbury Bridge 36 replacement project.
That doesn't appear to be working at all.
Oh, sorry. So our project team, we have Mahendra. Can you hear me all right?
See the one
Is it echoing? Okay, we have Mahendra Tillier. He is our project manager on the project and he is joining virtually today. We have Bill Harrington, our resident engineer. Tom Knight is our design consultant. And then we have Kevin Dismore, who is our contractor. And he is going to be joining virtually as well. And then Sophia Schinzel and with WSP working with the Vermont Agency of Transportation. And I am public information consultant. So today we're going to give you a bit of project history, a project overview, construction schedule, and then we're also going to go over the traffic impacts and detours, including any transit impacts as well, and an overview of public outreach, and then we will open it up to questions. I'm now going to turn it over to Tom.
Hey folks, thanks. Can you hear me okay? So the original bridge was constructed in 1928 with a 42-foot span T-beam structure. It's really on its last legs. I think that's the summary of these bridge rating numbers that you're saying, you know, the deck's in fair condition, the substructure's in fair condition. Once you get below fair, we start to get a little concerned. So you're right at the end of the life here. So in 2021, we completed a scoping study to look at various alternatives for replacing the structure. And ultimately what we decided on at this location was a buried structure, which is, it's really like, it's almost like an arch underneath the roadway. You go forward, slide here. So this is like an artist rendering of the type of structure we have out there. It explains that the roadway will be built on top of the precast frame that we put out there. It allows us some flexibility with the geometry of the roadway because we're really tying together the two intersections, the Lincoln Street intersection and the Vermont 100 intersection, and we're trying to make the turning geometry work for, you know, buses and vehicles that turn to go to the park and ride. So we have some curvature and other things we got to deal with. So we're going to build the structure as this type of precast frame underneath the roadway, and we're also relocating a sewer line that's currently suspended next to the bridge. That's going to be in the roadway above the frame. We are putting a new right-hand turn lane on Stowe Street. So as you're headed up towards Blush Hill, you'll be able to turn right, queue up and turn right there. And we're relocating the sidewalk, so the sidewalk's no longer gonna be on the downstream side, it's gonna be on the upstream side of the structure. I think that completes the important information I need to go over here. Other than, you know, we have a contractor on board now, so we had a bid in the fall. And the bid price for the project is the $3.4 million. The overall project cost is around $4.3 million. And then I'm going to turn over to Phil, talk a little bit more about the construction details and about the management of traffic during construction.
There we go.
Yeah, so the schedule. So in early June, the park and ride is going to be relocated by June. That's the plan. The week after Memorial Day is when we will be there to paint the Stanley Wasson Hall. That'll be the new park and ride. So after Memorial Day, that will get painted, and then we will do the relocation shortly thereafter. So first week of June, approximately, will be the new park and ride location. We'll have poster boards at the existing park and ride location to let everyone know that it's been moved. The bus at that time, once it is officially moved, the buses will then be using only the new park and ride. The existing park and ride will be kind of coned off, and it'll be obvious that it's closed. Mid-June, right now, it's scheduled for June 16th, is the closure of Snow Street. There is some flexibility in the contract to allow the contractor to push that to the right. I think 2 weeks maximum, so by the 29th of June, it will be contractually, that will be the start of the bridge closure period. It's a 60-day closure, so if it starts on June 16th, it will be August 16th or August 15th, whatever the 60-day window is. If they started in June 29th, then it'd be August 29th. Stowe Street would be reopened. During this closure, there will also be a closure of Lincoln Street within that 60-day window. The closure of Lincoln Street is contractually allowed 21 days to close Lincoln Street. The contractor can use that full 21 days if they need to. It may be open sooner, earlier than 21 days, but contractually they'll have 21 days to keep Lincoln Street closed. Yeah, so there's the detour for once the 60-day detour for Stowe Street. So that one's simple. Everyone knows you have to come into town and go up Stowe Street. Not very long. There is a limited access, so technically there's no walking or biking over the interstate corridor. That is a limited access. That is the Lincoln Street closure for 21 days. Perry Hill to Neelan Flats, going up to Guptill Road. Which, yeah, we can do it.
You explain that limited access?
Yeah, so the limited access is picture the interstate. They say no walking, biking, horseback riding. That's what we consider limited access. It's due to those slip ramps, the on and off ramps of the interstate. There's no crosswalks on them. And it's not designed for people crossing on and off ramps. So that's technically a limited access. And which is why we're doing the shuttle service. The town will be doing a shuttle service for anybody that would normally walk or has to walk. They could use the shuttle to get around.
And that's gonna be an on-demand service. So you'll put in a request through the town to be able to utilize that shuttle service.
Yeah, question.
Just quickly, what are the plans you've worked out with the town for emergency ambulance and fire if That's that people have to go to.
Yes, the town, being that this is a town project, administered through V-Trans, the town is going to be flagging or marking the detour route. So the town will be responsible for, Lincoln Street detour, putting the signs out and whatnot.
So you haven't worked the details on it.
So, no, that's not. We did meet with the, emergency services, I think back as early as 2020. And talked about how this would impact ambulance response times. And so the ambulance comes from Waterbury Center, right? Is that? It does now? You're on Main Street now? Okay.
We are, they are.
Okay.
That's my concern is the ambulance is in a different location, perhaps during this time. Ambulance service can be on both locations, so they can basically respond quickly to that area.
Yeah, I was not aware of that change for the ambulance service moving here, but if there's something we need to do logistically to make that easier, I'm happy to talk through it with anybody. Just let me know who the right person to talk to.
We're gonna hold questions until after, but we're gonna keep going and then we'll circle back.
Okay, next slide. Yeah, so more park and ride information. Like I said, the Wasson Stanley Hall parking lot will be used as the temporary park and ride location. Again, that's early June, so the week after Memorial Day, we'll be painting it and putting some temporary signs up. And then by the first week of June, I would think that park and ride would be open. We wanted to get the relocation done weeks in advance of the closure. So people who would normally take that route, they would see, oh, it's been moved. And they'll have time to get down there before the road's actually closed and people are trying to find where it is. So that will be relocated well in advance of the closure. All the bus companies have been made aware and they will be moving their bus stop to that new park and ride location. Yeah, just expanding again on the limited access and the on-demand shuttle that will be used to accommodate that limited access, and Central Street is closed, so. And yeah, the contact information for that shuttle, I think it was on that slide. Yes, or Tom, our municipal manager, will be the point of contact for requesting that shuttle.
So for public information, to sign up for our construction updates, those are weekly email updates that go out every Friday, has information about traffic impacts, construction activities, detours, delays, closures. You can scan the QR code, but if you signed in on that sign-in sheet that's going around, I'll also take down your email and add you to our email list as well. You're always welcome to contact me via email or phone, and I will connect with the project team to get a response with any of your inquiries that you might have.
You've gone quiet.
There's also a link to the V-Trans fact sheet as well.
We lost sound.
Is it corrected now? Does it sound better now?
Oh, yeah, sort of. You sound really far away. It was better earlier, but it's fine.
Okay, now we will open it up to questions. Yes.
I think if I heard it correctly, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, but I think I heard that there was gonna be a 60-day closure of Stowe Street. And then within that 60-day window, a 21-day closure of Lincoln Street. Help us understand why that's required, and is it strategic to actually implement both in the same window?
7.
Yes, well, Stowe Street will definitely be closed when we're replacing the bridge. So that closure has to happen. Lincoln Street closure is more of a construction. The means of constructing it will require a large excavation, as it's a buried structure. So the large excavation opens up that hole large. And then we need even larger crane to sit on top of that hole and drop all the pieces into place. The largest precast piece is about 90,000 pounds. So it's a large piece of concrete, and this box is made out of many pieces of concrete. So there's a lot of lifting and placing to go, and that crane ideally was envisioned to be on the Lincoln Street side, which you couldn't get around with a big crane sitting there for several weeks.
Thank you, that helps me understand why, and
That's basically.
appreciate it.
You're in the back.
One of the early meetings mentioned that you thought you could do the closure in a week as opposed to the full 21 days, but you were allowed 21 days. Can you comment on that?
If Kevin is on the meeting, I can have Kevin chime in from Jay Hutchins, but yeah, contractually, they're allowed 21 days. So I don't want to say it's only going to be closed a week. It may be only closed a week, and Jay Hutchins may say, hey, we don't need Lincoln Street closed any longer, let's open it up. When Lincoln Street is opened, it will be open to one-way alternating with flagger control during working hours. So you'll have flaggers during the day, because we'll still have, occupying quite a bit of real estate over there.
You're actually setting the precast structures, usually not the case, but it's long.
Yeah, and that's to be determined. It may go very quickly, it may go slow. All the precast pieces will arrive on their side, and they all need to be set down gently on the ground, flipped to the upright position, and then set into place. So there's quite a bit of steps involved in setting the precast. So I don't want to say it's going to take a week and have it take 3. But that's the reason.
First, thank you for coming and taking your time out to come and share all this information with us. What are the plans for crowd control, monitoring? You're talking about a big crane, and I'll bet you there's gonna be people that wanna watch. And I'm just wondering what kind of thought has gone into that.
Yeah, there's no access in our job site. So people will be, told to stay back. You could watch very safely from Lincoln Street. I would say that would be a safe spot to watch. But yeah, people generally pretty respectful.
Are there incentives and deducts for either getting the work done ahead of schedule or if they're delayed in the contract?
There is an incentive in this.
There are incentive and disincentive. I couldn't tell you the price off the top of my head. But there are incentives and disincentives.
Actually, this one is done with,
Liquidated damages. Yeah,
just a disincentive.
Yeah, so there's just a disincentive. Yeah.
Will the lights be adjusted at all to accommodate the extra traffic at Guptal?
That's a good question. We were not planning on needing that. I believe that is, it does have, it's fairly new. It uses radar to detect when cars are present. And it's pretty good on the timing over there. I mean, it does have the ability to extend green time if needed. But certainly if we notice any issues, we can certainly work with our traffic folks and modify that quite easily through these electronic signals.
The Stowe Street light has always been deadly, so that's why I was asking.
I live beyond the park and ride. I'm a fire officer here. And if I have to go 20 minutes around to get to the fire station, that's not a good situation. I sometimes operate the apparatus. So I'm one of the first ones to the station.
Right.
If I have to go 20 minutes around, it's not gonna be a good situation.
Yeah, understood. The detour is 5 miles, so it looks like you'll have the full detour where you are. It is a 5-mile detour. We are limited to by just what roads we have. It would be fun.
There's no way, I mean, if they got construction equipment, they could keep it to one side to allow access through there in case of emergency.
Yeah, it's, when the crane is sitting there probably won't be the ability, but, certainly we will work to make sure that if it's not physically blocked, we'll do our best to make sure that maybe there's a code in the way that you can move something, that's fine.
What plans and provisions are in place to address speeders? In case traffic is gonna go over and down and Flats is already a problem. Has there any thought given to that?
Yeah, I would defer to the town for that one. They are in charge of flagging and, any maintenance on the detour road that is needed.
Also, just noting, we have some folks on Zoom with questions, so let's give one opportunity. Tom, who's first on the chat?
There was a question about, is there room to walk or bike through Lincoln Street during the 21-day closure? Over Zoom, over chat?
That I don't know about. Contractually, no. Will there be, any pedestrian access through Lincoln Street during the closure? And contractually, no, there is not a provision to, put in a pedestrian walkway through that area during the closure. But like I said, if it's physically possible, we will definitely try our best to accommodate people.
And there was a question about the sidewalk and Route 100. Can you maybe expand upon the new sidewalk and the bridge and how far that goes, perhaps?
Yes, you may know some backstory behind.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll let,
Sure. So the plan, there is a project that plans to take the sidewalk from the Blush Hill intersection north along Route 100, and that's another project that's going to, funded by V-Trans after this is done. I think there are some funds obligated for that, but I'm not sure of the details. The compromise with this project was that with the bridge project, we would take the sidewalk up to that intersection, not put in a crosswalk to go across 100. We put in conduit so they could later on install, the signal buttons and things needed for that crosswalk across 100. But those are essentially two separate pieces.
And there was an online question about the individual lives at the end of Stowe Street, and they're wondering how far back will the work site extend on Stowe Street?
It down near North Street.
yeah, no further than.
Yeah, right. It ends right about North Street.
Repeat the question. We can't hear Tom.
Okay, the question was how far down Stowe Street from the bridge the construction limits are expected. And we expect it to, there's work all the way down to North Street.
The north end of North Street.
North end of North Street, yeah.
Are you leaving or have you left the final design plans with the town so that others can look at it? I live on Perry Hill, so I just.
The town has plans. I don't know if they have a printed copy.
You can get them on, the project fact sheet has a link to the. Yeah.
Something with a final design on it. And a question, on Lincoln Street, when traffic's trying to get onto Stowe Street, the traffic light backs up traffic across the bridge, back down Stowe Street. And it would be, I don't know what the final design calls for, but there should be a stop zone there, so the traffic on Stowe Street leaves a gap, so people who want to turn from Lincoln Street can turn and go toward the village. And so my comment is, I don't know the design, whether or not that's in there.
We don't have any areas that are blocked off in there. We think that queuing issue is going to be a little bit less because now you're going to have the right hand kind of slip lane or, right-hand turn lane for people to go north. But if that becomes a problem, I think we could deal with.
That solves the problem, that solves the problem on the other side of the bridge, which is the Route 100 side. But on the Lincoln Street side is what I'm talking about. When the traffic light is stopped, red, traffic backs up across the bridge and will back up down Stowe Street. On a routine basis, I think.
Yeah, it'll be a little better since there'll be two lanes, a right and a left turn lane.
Yes, there's
So
more
the
queuing
cars will
room.
be-
And all the right-hand traffic, and a lot of times you keep going. So the traffic backups won't be as bad, but I hear your point about if people stop and block in the Lincoln Street traffic, there's nothing there telling them, do not block intersection. And, you know, we could talk with the town about some signs. I think it might be a little far to put pavement markings there, but maybe a sign just saying, do not block
Well, it's a
intersection.
matter of pavement mark, what it is.
Okay,
The town had, the select board had a meeting in the end of March, and there were issues about the safety of the intersection itself. And I know that's down the road when the bridge project is done, but I want to give you a sheet. You're an engineer, professional engineer. Okay, I want you to read this if you would, because there's some logic there, how to improve that intersection, make it safer, traffic light changes. There's a bunch of things I'm not gonna spend time here, but I think if you look at that, and then while you're out there on the job site, you can see what happens on Route 100 with vehicles trying to come down Bush Hill and vehicles that are blasting through a red light, for example. You see why that's a safety issue, and it's expanded when Stowe Street's open. So, I'm gonna give you this, which is what was presented to the select board, back in the end of March. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have the dates for when you're gonna close the bridge? And when you're gonna close Lincoln Street?
so,
Yeah,
yes, so the question
Is
was
that on paper somewhere?
about the dates and
it's not,
not set in stone, so the dates are between May 16th and May 29th is when the contractor will be closing the bridge. June 16th and June 29th. Yeah, and then it'll be 60 days after that. The 21-day Lincoln Street closure is flexible within that 60 days. So we don't know when the 21 days are gonna happen, or if they're gonna be the full 21 days.
What's the new schedule coming out on the internet?
we have a schedule. The schedule right now shows June 16th. as the-
T3 schedule.
It is, yep. That comes out on June 6th. Well, June 16th is on the schedule now. Contractually, the contractor can move that, but right now the schedule is June 16th.
And our PowerPoint will also be posted on the town website, and then the best thing to do would be to sign up for the weekly updates. And that will tell you exactly when we'll be closing bridges and the, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Does the moving of the sewer coincide with the closure, or are you gonna do that prior?
Prior to the closure, we are temporarily relocating the sewer. And we'll be having bypass pumps implemented during the closure. So we will be bypass pumping with a pump from manhole to manhole. Once the project is nearly wrapped up and we're backfilling and putting the road together, then you will put the sewer line, insulated sewer line over the box. And then we'll switch the sewer once we're all tied in.
Okay, but they'll do that temporary transfer prior to the closure.
Yes, sir. Yeah, prior to.
You jump back to your sketch of the bridge. Drawing.
Sure, if you, sir, we'll go back to our.
It'll take another minute here to open it all, but I can. Share that again with the audience. Recall which slide?
Third or fourth slide.
You had to do that, Chris, huh?
Yeah, we're in some now. There we
Here?
are. There you go. So, those look like above surface footings. What type of structure are those gonna be setting on? Because looking at that drawing, I'm thinking to myself, what type of scouring is eventually?
Yeah, good question. Good question. There'll be no scour since we're gonna be sitting on bedrock.
Okay, so that was my question, is it gonna be on lead?
Yeah, we're gonna pin it to bedrock both sides. Bedrock is exposed all through there. So we'll be taking the bedrock down to footing elevation, pouring a cap in place subfooting, and then a precast footing pinned to that, and then the green.
Okay,
on top
I
of that.
suspected probably that was the case, because normally you wouldn't do that, but,
There may be a portion of it that's exposed like this, though. You know,
Yeah,
we're bringing the subfooting up pretty high because we want to take out all the irregularity in the ledge. So that they can have a nice clean elevation set to precast on. So it's gonna be a pretty significant subfooting that we put in there, just to make sure we're, you know, not doing a lot of rock excavation.
yeah, and, somebody called me, a while back, looking for a place to get rid of the, surplus material that might come out of there. Did you find a place for that? And, have you done any testing to see what, like, as I had explained to the guy that called me, a lot of it was probably gonna be junk, riprap, poor soils. I'm curious to know what you found out, if anything, and where you found a home for it.
The soil that's in place now is classified as urban background soils. Meaning it's kind of a general classification that just applies to urban areas that might have had activity on it at some point or another. So all of the excavation material has to be either reused on site or it has to go to an approved area where it can go. In this case, it is the I-89 ledge cut. That's right in your site. So that the ledge cut right off the off ramp.
Where the
Yeah.
staging area was?
Yeah, with the staging area, so we're gonna keep filling that up until that's filled right up.
Had a guy just up the road there on Laurel Lane that was, looking for some material.
Yeah.
And I thought of you guys. So I didn't know if you found a spot for it.
Yeah, most of it will be going to that ledge cut.
Yeah, he ain't going much further up the road. But anyway, that answers my question.
Using this picture and see what I think is being described as almost like a parapet condition along the sidewalk, and then on the opposite side, in lieu of curb, I guess I would say, it looks like we really have kind of a parapet condition.
Yeah, the bridge rail will be a concrete combination steel box beam, so it will have concrete for the first 18 inches, 2 feet, forget what it is, and then it will have steel rail on top of that. And so that concrete piece, yeah, those are precast and they have shapes just like it's shown, kind of an L shape.
Is there any treatment, any kind of aesthetic kind of form liner or treatment to the?
There's some panels on the inside face area. Yeah, yeah, it's generally like the historic bridge rail that we're using now.
How about the concrete piece though?
The concrete piece has like a little recessed
Got a
panel.
detailed
panel on it.
Yeah, only on the inside face, not on the outside.
Thank you.
This won't happen this year, but the past 2 years, we've been visited by a tropical storm on the 10th of July. And I was wondering if you have any contingencies for that, for the rally.
We'll have our fingers crossed. Hopefully it will be. No, we're on ledge, so we shouldn't expect any scour conditions. But yeah, that will certainly delay us if there's a huge storm again.
There was an online question about Lincoln Street. Is the closure 24 hours a day?
Yes, it is. Yeah, during the closure, it will be 24 hours.
I have a question right along. So the 21-day allotment, is that consecutive days? Or-
Yes, that is.
Okay.
In the back.
Yeah, currently pulling out of Lincoln Street, taking a left on the snow. You've got to inch out, you can't see around that corner
Yeah.
very well at all. And I know a number of people mentioned, is there any plan to chop some of that?
Yeah, it will be a lot better. We have sidewalk on that side of the road. So the sidewalk will push the bridge rail quite a ways back, and then we do have some truck aprons.
Yeah, a lot of the issue right now is vegetation, I think. Is that correct? Like,
It's vegetation, but also I think they put in a new utility pole. It's pretty close to the edge, so not much can be taken off of that, I don't think.
okay.
It's just the visibility, taking the left, if anyone's coming down very, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think the new geometry of the intersection is gonna allow you to pull up more perpendicular and having the sidewalk there to the left will make it easier to see around that corner.
Will there be any blasting associated with the project?
There is no blasting anticipated. I think I dare not say it may not even be allowed on this job. I'd have to check the provisions. But as of right now, there's no blasting anticipated. I don't know, is Kevin on here? I want to say there was no blasting anymore.
I don't recall the details on that either, but I know that what they're removing is a weathered ledge, which generally they can do with chipping with mechanical equipment and just chipping it with a hoe ram. But I'm not sure if we excluded blasting.
We don't have much ledge we're taking, we're only going to footing elevation. It's basically, the weather drop, once we find hard rock, we don't want to go down any further and just replace it with concrete. So only, much rock will be taken out as absolutely needed.
So if you did have to blast, if it became an issue, you would just implement regular state regulations of notifying people and.
That's right. We have a whole blasting
Right.
procedures that goes through.
And that would kick in to notify the neighbors.
Involves monitoring of nearby houses, exactly, yeah, so the contractor doesn't like to blast if they don't have to, usually, hoe rams are more than suitable for taking out weather crops.
Yeah, like I said, the cast in place concrete we're putting in, we're actually filling it up pretty high. So the only parts of ledge we'd have to take off would be like high spots in the ledge that happen to go just above that, and it's really just knocking those down. There is one corner of the abutment on the Vermont 100 side where we couldn't get good borings because there were utilities in that area. We think that it's been excavated there prior when they constructed the previous bridge, so we don't anticipate there being this big mountain of ledge in that area, but it's still an unknown and it's something we'll have to deal with when we expose that area.
See if there's anyone else online.
I'll just make one more comment. We lived through 3+ years of Main Street reconstruction. I think a 21-day construction project that makes Stowe Street 10 times better than it ever was. It's going to be a flip on the radar.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'd like to offer that the designation of the existing structure being fair is extremely generous. It's really important. Let's suck it up and get this done.
I also just want to quickly say, normally the town would pay 5% of this bill. And that's been taken over by the state some time ago. So that 3.4, 3.5 million in front of us, none of it is our cost. Otherwise, that'd be 175,000 forthcoming. So that's been great.
Yeah, we made a deal. We said the town has to flag the detour and we'll cover the bill.
I talked about it at town meeting like 5 years ago. The bridge was falling apart then. I'm just, it's the process, right, to get fixed.
They are talking, it's studies. Just the beginning of.
Well, I did, but I mean, how did they do that? I mean, who studied it?
Well, Tom can speak to that. It's the scoping study, I suppose. We do a.
Yeah, it's been studied for quite some time, but
What is the
Um,
question?
the question is, how does this get approved for the funding? And it's a prioritization question, so that the state has so many funds set aside for the town highway bridge program. I'm not an expert in the funding piece, and I don't want to comment like that just to explain it, but so there's a list that the Regional Planning Commission puts together to prioritize which projects go to the top of the list for that town highway funding. And towns kind of take their turns and jostle, and it's a little bit based on the deteriorating condition of the bridges, like how things move up and down the list. But they waited quite a long time to be on this. Mike, if you could explain better.
I can speak a little bit to the history of the project. I used to be the state's bridge engineer, and we had this project in the program for about 30 years. So, the town requested that it be a project back before the prioritization system was in place. And so once we put in place the prioritization system, this one really wasn't a priority. A bridge rated as a 5, not bad. 4 is when you start to look at it. There's a lot of town highway bridges that are sitting at 3 and below. So it really wasn't a priority, but the town made the initiative to have a feasibility study done. And then the Agency of Transportation advanced it from there to a full scoping project and then through design. So it has quite a storied past, but as the state's bridge engineer, I didn't feel it was really right for me to push it along just because I drive it every day.
May I add on to that one? I'd love to say the state's consultants is making it really sweet. The truth of the matter is, it's like giving breech birth to move these bridge projects. And this project and many others in our state at the local level are in serious concerns. For all of you, please pay attention. You might note that many of our local bridges now have been posted with an emergency load rating posting. I believe approaching 2/3 of the town highways in the state now have these kind of load rating postings. And the load ratings are less than what we need for modern society, with like propane trucks and fire trucks and things to that effect. And this is a great opportune time to kind of just say that. Great.
Thank you. And just one more thing, the accelerated bridge program, which is this is part of, has really made it much easier to push projects through, because the agency cuts the percentage that the town has to pay in half by a full closure like this. It eliminates the need for a bypass temporary bridge that needs to be permitted and right of way acquired, and that adds probably 2 years and maybe $250,000 or more to the project cost. So this new method of that we took on after Hurricane Irene has really advanced town highway bridge projects much quicker.
Do we know what the cost is going to be? I know that we're not doing it right here in Waterbury, but it's a state we are. What is the cost of it?
The construction cost is $3.4 million. And overall cost was 4.3.
And I have a couple online questions. So the first pertains to schools, really a 2-part question.
Speak up as much as you can.
So the first question online was, couple online questions pertaining to schools. First one, what is about busing and the routes and how are those modified? And the second one was to say that this starts just a couple of days before the last day of school, so they couldn't show up until the following week.
When is the last day of school?
The 18th.
Oh, the 18th. Oh. By 2 days. Oh, so we're in this, yeah, the school should be. Well, right.
Yeah, the intent was to line up with the school calendar, so I think we missed it by 2 days, I think. There's a disconnect there. I don't know.
No days. Well, yeah, ideally it's before, it's during the summer break. Strategic closure, plus it's the summertime.
So should we plan on the 18th now?
Possible.
And then there was one other question, is how are you gonna remove the bridge, the existing bridge?
How are we moving the existing bridge?
Yeah, we're gonna cut it up into pieces. The concrete T-beams will more than likely be lifted off in one full section. So the structure may come apart in maybe 8 pieces. And then they will just ram the abutments. So it's, yeah, big rams. Yes, ma'am.
You were mentioning sidewalks. I wondered if you might go over just one more time what the new sidewalk additions are gonna be. Obviously, there's a sidewalk on one side of the bridge, it's gonna be the side that is now to the opposite side. But when you were talking about that intersection in the corner, I wasn't entirely clear on like what new sidewalks are gonna be sort of in the design of that whole area of Lincoln Street.
The sidewalk will come up Stowe Street, not, it's on your left if you're going up Stowe Street. At the top of North Street, we're putting in a new crosswalk or just new sidewalk maybe. That will cross Stowe Street to get onto now the right side of Stowe Street on the Lincoln Street side. We have 2 truck aprons on Lincoln Street side, so these are raised concrete areas so that the trucks and buses can turn. The sidewalk goes through that and gets onto the bridge. Oh, it crosses on Lincoln Street, yeah, so you'll cross Lincoln Street onto the bridge, not to 100.
During construction, I think you said there's gonna be a shuttle. Could you elaborate a bit on that? Because there is traffic across that bridge every day. You know, and it's like people go up there, walk up to Shaw's, come back. People come down from the motel, go downtown. So how is that all going to be handled?
I can answer that.
Yes, sir.
So we have plans to do our best to operate an on-demand service as needed. Last year, Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission put out cameras on the bridge for a month, and they did not have a single pedestrian use the bridge for that month. So we're certainly not anticipating an awful lot of traffic.
Okay. We live at the corner of the bridge, and we see people going across that bridge every day. So I don't know what the camera showed you, but I can tell you what we see as people that live there. So you need to anticipate that people are going to use that. And if they, there's a line, they aren't going to walk down Route 100. Right. So please factor that into your planning. There's more traffic there than you would expect.
For cyclists coming up Stowe Street, will there be a bike lane that'll be either incorporated with the sidewalk, or will there be one with the roadway going across to connect to one?
And there's not a dedicated bike lane, but there's a 4-foot shoulder.
Okay.
So it'll be a 4-foot shoulder next to the sidewalk.
Will there be a line or anything to indicate?
Yeah.
We'll stripe a line.
4-foot shoulder or sidewalk.
Yeah.
4-foot shoulder with a white line, and then you'll have your right turn lane and your left turn lane, and then your southbound lane. And then another shoulder, so it's quite wide.
Last call for questions, and then I think we'll head to the rest of our select board meeting. Any other? So, just to reframe, Tom, we're gonna be posting this presentation. We can link to from the town website. There's contact info for weekly updates. If you're in the room, as about 35 of you are, there's a sign-in sheet. Who has the sign-in sheet?
Two copies.
2 copies of the sign-in sheet, so that gets you signed up for the emails, and that information will also be posted on the town website, along with a number to call for all of these updates. All right. Any other things on that? All right, can you just go back to me, please, to make sure we're visible?
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all. Nope, you're good. Sorry, I just meant the first page of the Zoom. I'm gonna try and point this so I can discuss it. All right, for folks in the room, you're welcome to stay if you're interested, and ditto online. We did plan for some input, knowing that there might be a larger crew. The next select board item is the consent agenda. There's 3 items on it: to approve the meeting minutes from our last regular meeting on April 21st, a second class license and tobacco license for Village Market, and a second class liquor license for Fairfield Inn and Suites. Is there a motion on the consent agenda? Roger?
I move to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second. All right, so motion by Roger and second by Tori to approve the consent agenda. Any questions from the select board? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Consent agenda is approved. Next up, we have public comment. This is part of all select board meetings. This is an opportunity for folks to comment on something that is not already on the agenda that we approved for this meeting. So we have some opportunities for other things, but we would ask you to keep your comments under 5 minutes. If it's longer than that, we can schedule you for a future meeting. Is there anyone in the room or online who wants to speak on public comment? Yes, do you want to come up and sit in this chair? I don't mean it to be the hot seat, but because of the owl online, I think it's everyone's best bet.
Do you want to make the music?
How are folks doing online? Now that
Well, as long as they're close enough to the owl.
okay, so we will say standard for this room. Thank you to, I counted about 35 that just, we have folks come up to sit and just ask for as much background quiet as possible so folks online can hear too. Thank you. Sorry for all that preface. Public comment.
Cheryl Bloor, Waterbury resident. Just curious if there's any intent to use maybe some of our, the lot funds for some better lighting on Stowe Street. There seems to be a lot of shenanigans going on in the park at different times at night down there. And I think folks walking up and down there would appreciate, if we can. Obviously, there's some houses there. I know there's some lights in front of houses. It's probably not something I would want beaming in my house, but there are some other lights that are not directly on somebody's house. The lights are really weak and maybe it's best for cars, but for pedestrians, you don't have that nice lighting here on Main Street. So it gets a little dark and a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes. So just something I wanted to bring up since we have, extra funds coming in at times. So it's something I'd like to just have you guys think about.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Other folks on public comment. Mike.
Well, if we're talking about shenanigans on Stowe Street, seems to be an increase in graffiti along that road and other places in town. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the select board. Had conversations or emails with Tom, and he's seen a number of pictures, the dry bridge, the railroad bridge over Stowe Street. There's quite a bit underneath that. And all the way up Stowe Street, really, on telephone poles. We've had the utility boxes painted here in town. So if there's anything that can be done to that about that, appreciate hearing about that. I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you very much. Anyone online for public comment? This would be your chance to unmute or put something in the chat if you have a public comment for something not on the agenda. Not seeing any online. Last call in the room. Yes, please come on up. Thank you.
Sorry, Tom Bloor, to his point on the graffiti, I don't know if the state police have it or not, but there's graffiti, then there's art, right? Some things mean something. I don't know if there's an ability to capture what that is and then publish it, see if it is manifesting itself throughout. I think if you drive through Waterbury, you'll see there's a very characteristic message, if you will. I don't know what it means. It could just be a signature, but I don't, I think it should be captured. We're just painting over it and that's wonderful. But if you look at the junction boxes, if you look at the bridge, there's a very specific signal. I don't know what it is. Again, it just should be captured.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll continue on. Our next item is housing development at the former Stanley Wasson site, opportunity for general input. For folks who have followed select board meetings for the past couple of months, I tend to do a little talking up front to frame. So I'll do a bit of that and turn it over to Tom. But I will say in general, if you just listen to the beginning of this meeting, there's no imminent plans to do anything with Stanley Wasson other than make it the park and ride for the summer. So to be clear, the property is owned by the state of Vermont. I believe since after Tropical Storm Irene, there was explorations of what could happen. The select board, with some but not all of the current members, passed a resolution back in February of 2023, expressing interest in purchasing the site from the state of Vermont in order to facilitate housing development there. Understanding that this was a meeting we thought would be well attended, we wanted to give some opportunity for that. So obviously selling state property takes an act of the legislature. Let Tom speak to kind of the current status. But I would say in general, right now, the town has an option. So that's not a purchase and sales. That's not any final. It's the potential to do the thing that is buying the property. We as the select board need to take input and consider how and under what terms we might entertain actually doing that. So tonight is a first phase of that conversation, just to give you all as the public here in the room and online input about what we should be considering as we move forward with this. We will have further additional opportunities for input, but we just wanted to give this time to do that. I'll turn it over to Tom to add any other details, but really just to name, this is a first step input phase because we want to hear from you all what's important to you all as we weigh this.
Sure, the couple more details. The option, we spent $500 to secure the option. In the event we choose to purchase the site, there is a cost of $400,000. The intent would be to recover that through an eventual sale to someone developing housing. No surprise, the property is well served by water and sewer, so it's shovel ready from that perspective. There is a town-owned storm sewer line right through the middle of the site, and there's also some state infrastructure around the edges that we would need to make sure that we don't spend our resources relocating those if needed. I think those are the main points I had in mind.
Great. And just to further illustrate in terms of timeline and transparency, again, interest in this beginning in February 2023. And I want to say that was like 2 weeks ago, we just got that option approved. So just to name, it's been a lot of wait and see in terms of finalizing things behind, but not movement. Questioner, do you want to go ahead with input?
Well, I'm a little confused. When is the option good for? How long does it last, or how long has it been in place? It's just approved by the legislature, is that what you're saying?
It's just approved by the town and the state.
And the state, okay.
So the option is for 6 months, but we've been told in essence that we can extend that for as long as we need. And the understanding is 6 months is a pretty short window here.
Yeah.
Roger?
And it was approved by the legislature at the end of last session.
The sale has been approved by the legislature. One other detail, sorry, I should have mentioned this before, it just slipped my mind in the moment. So that site has been added to the town's designated downtown. And what that means is it is exempt from Act 250. So it's about as development ready as you can be in the state of Vermont.
Well, with that, we have 30 minutes on the agenda. Again, the goal is really to like know that there's a lot. Again, this is where we are at the current status, but we want to know what is important to folks as we consider moving forward. With all of this, I'm going to try to limit it. We'll do 2 in the room, 2 online and alternate. But we'll go from there. Is there anyone who wants to kick it up with input? Chris is moving, so Chris is first.
So Tom, I don't know if you can discuss perhaps your perception of what could happen there. What type of housing might be constructed there? I guess my bigger concern is, and I've talked several times about it, is this ongoing narrative that more economic development is the highway to lower property taxes, and that has never proven itself, not in my eyes. So I'm curious to know, if we get involved in this type of project, looking further into it, what type of housing would it be? What type of return on investment for the community would it yield? And or cost burden, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yep, so the first thing any developer is going to ask you if you sit to negotiate something is, are you seeking to maximize your grand list, or do you want affordable housing? And they're completely different goals. And so really that's what I think we're asking questions from the public about. So a developer is going to ask us what we want there. Just me speaking, but not just a select board. I also think about sidewalks. I also think about a crosswalk. I also think that that's a fairly large pad, and so could there be a small pocket park as part of it, especially if you're going to put some significant development there. What I will say is, on the affordable housing side, under the best of circumstances, the last 5 years, those projects have a 3, 4, 5 year lead time. 51 South Main was approved by the town just about 3 years ago. They put a shovel in the ground recently. So those projects take some time. I'm not exactly embedded in that world, but I suspect that their funding sources are not the same as they were a few months back. So I think if there's an affordable component, it's going to be more difficult than it was at 51 South Main Street. I don't think I'm shocking anyone by saying that. My personal hope is that in the end, there's no net cost to the town. There are some cities and towns that contribute pretty substantially to lower housing development to their just to get it done. Sometimes there's a big public cost for infrastructure, sometimes there's straight up cash granted to developers. So it's not unusual to see pretty major public investments to get housing built in the state of Vermont. I'm pretty hopeful that Waterbury is a strong market and that we can avoid that. Does that answer it sufficiently?
Yeah, so I mean, you don't envision the town getting involved in any type of a TIF program or where we would. Your goal is to just perhaps purchase the property and then.
So the TIF program as it exists is, you'd have to create a bigger district. It's not parcel based. There is a parcel based bill going through the legislature. But I haven't followed it too closely because it's not law. And I've sort of learned, don't follow bills until they're law.
Yeah.
Unless they're really directly interested in something you're trying to get done for your town.
And I just say, I would love if you have a headline of what you're most concerned about, and then if we.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Say that at the end of the day, I want to make sure that the town sees a positive outcome from return on investment type scenario here. And not something that's gonna just cost taxpayers more money down the road, because we've already are witnessing enough pressure on our property taxes as it is. Just don't want to see more people having to leave their homes for the sake of others coming in.
Other folks who have input or questions. just to say we're getting really detailed. It can be a big picture, like I would love to see, I would hate to see, I hope you're considering. I feel like that's the level of input we're at now before we're getting to more granular recommendations. Come on up.
Sure. Hi, how are you? Pete Martell, I live in that area. But the flooding is what concerns me in that area. You know, the past, year and a half, we had the 3 floods that came through and that area was all underwater. And so I'm concerned about putting kind of good money after bad in a situation like that, where what problems is it gonna arise with the neighbors, which I am one, but in general, should we be moving a little bit further away from the river? Because I don't think it's gonna get any better. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to consider, it's just, again, is it with the flooding on the horizon and with FEMA getting cut and so on and so forth, is this a situation where maybe a little higher ground might be a better idea? Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Other folks, I said I'd try to alternate. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to provide a comment? If you can do the raise hand or just unmute yourself. Now.
Hi, yeah, I have a question. I'm curious how big the actual site is and what the footprint of that technically is that we would be purchasing, and would be helpful to have a reference point, like bigger or smaller than 51 South Main as an example. And then I'll also just give the comment that I'm very keen on the idea of trying to do another affordable housing project with Downstreet if that's available, or exploring other options like cottage courts or other sort of varieties of housing that's maybe a little bit more dense than just single family homes on individual plots. I think that would be great to see down there.
So for context now, the lot is about 2.4 acres. 51 South Main Street is about 0.8 of an acre. So 3 times the size.
Awesome, thank you.
Also online, Joe, go ahead.
Thanks, Alyssa. I just wanted to point out, we have a lot of discussion around affordable housing, and we focus most of the time, most of that discussion is on rentals. But I also just wanted to raise an awareness around home ownership. And when we updated the data for the coming town plan, what we found out is that the median household income for a dual income household in Waterbury is about $420,000. And the median price for a three bedroom home is $535,000. So there's over $100,000 gap between what people could, or what they, I should say, the median, what they could afford is $400,000. It's much less than that. It's 100. What they could afford is $400,000, and that what the price is over $500. So there's a $100,000 gap in that. I do agree with the previous comments around we don't need to have single family housing, but I would hope that as we begin to make proposals, we could get some of that housing there to be, if you would, starter homes that would allow people to get into home ownership.
I think Wayne online is having trouble, so go ahead and then we can go back in the room.
Yeah, hi. I live on I own a property on Randall Street. I don't actually live there yet, but I've been trying to track this issue, and I was wondering, wasn't there a plan, a prospective buyer, even before we had the arrangement with the state? I think some Canadian developer or something. Wasn't there a previous plan for a specific housing development on that property, or am I completely mistaken?
Nothing like that to my knowledge.
I know the town of Waterbury in maybe 2013 had some potential discussions. I'm honestly looking at Lisa Scagliotti. I'm wondering if this was the April Fool's article about the 50-story Airbnb, which was sounding like your favorite holiday guest. So it was satirical. There's no 50-story Airbnbs proposed, if that was indeed the article. All right. The reporter did her job. She's laughing here in the room, so thank you. Anyone else in the room with comments? Yeah, come on up, Billy.
Billy Victor. So I've been thinking about this issue a lot, talking with Joe and the planning commission, and actually talking to people who invest in building properties. One of the things that we don't really have too many opportunities in town here is to find a place to build to scale, where we could put 30, 40 units, right? We just don't have enough opportunities, and this would be one. And so it could be a rare opportunity to put a dent in our affordable housing issue, because we're sitting in, doing a housing trust fund. We're gonna do 2 to 3 units. We're gonna lose a couple of units here. We're gonna build 3 units there. This is a chance to maybe have a material impact. So I would put a lot of weight on that. Number 2, I think we really need to think long and hard about what we want by affordability. I'm not saying we shouldn't do affordability. We should actually think about what it means. Is it 80% of area median income, meaning poor people, homeless people, transition people, or is it workforce housing? 120, I'm gonna make up a number, but 120% of area, median area income, whatever it is. I think that's a threshold issue. What actually is the goal of the town? I have my own views, but I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna criticize myself here. It's also we rezoned it so we can get more height and density. So we anticipate, the planning commission did, and you approved that, but it's also in the historic district. And I worry a little bit about, it's gonna be a relatively large building that's gonna face some pushback from the community about just the historic district designation and whether it looks right. So I'm not even sure what to do about that, other than flag that as a potential community opposition. So thanks.
And Billy, it's also in the design review district, so that will be for the DRB.
Right. Actually, I used the wrong term. There's no design review. It's a design review. There's no historic district anymore under the zoning bylaws. Right. I was thinking about something else there. Thanks.
Other folks who want to provide comments? Yes, come on up.
Hey again, Cheryl Blower. So I'm very concerned about a big tenement style building that is gonna go in there. I'd rather see something. I know the planning commission's not going to allow single family housing, but I would like to see what Joe was talking about. Something that families could move into, not single apartments, not low income apartments. I'd like to see actual families be able to move into this town, and we're talking about grand list versus apartments, and that to me is a concern. The style of the buildings are a concern to me. We've seen ugly things that have happened in Burlington and Rutland and even in Barry and Montpelier. We're a village, we're not a city, so that's another concern. And I guess I'm not a big fan of having another down street type of building. I'd like to see something that's not necessarily low income, but affordable, because those two aren't mutually together. They're also mutually exclusive. So affordable doesn't necessarily mean low income. It just means somebody being able to afford something for their family. So thanks.
Thank you so much. Other folks, anyone on Zoom? No, in the room? Yeah, come on up.
So Tom Lord, I work for her.
Noted.
Can you talk a little bit about the process now? I mean, you're getting feedback, but obviously we've got about 30 people in the room, 5,000 people in the town, or whatever the number is. Way forward, sell the place, get feedback, and then we move forward. The step between getting feedback and moving forward, how long are we talking?
Pretty hard to determine. I would expect at least a year.
Okay. So 51 South Main will be built. start to occupy. Then we move on to something else.
I mean, there's plenty of work in the interim, but yeah, I would expect at least a year before there's something, something concrete before the select board in open session that would essentially be some form of development agreement. These things I think can take quite some time.
So we can build out surveys, feedback, look at Joe's comment about what was the metric we were using for progress in terms of rentals, 3%, 1%. Because I think that I really wanted to kind of get on Joe's bandwagon for a second, because I think there's a sweet spot for starter homes. I think we have an aging population in Vermont. Life happens and houses become available for people. I think there is a sweet spot, and the market for affordability is really based off density. So when we have more houses that become available, then we start flooding the market. And I shouldn't say flooding, we start easing the market with some of these other options. Starter homes are probably going to be a sweet spot. So I think getting feedback is so important in the next year. 51 South Main will go up, we'll have occupation, we'll get some feedback. Waterbury's always been a crossroads, that's what we are. It would really be, I think, interesting to make sure that we're not overwhelming one market at the cost of another. So that's all I think.
Thank you very much. Really awesome. Other, yes, Mike.
Yeah, just, I was thinking that, we may not need to bring more people into town, but we need housing that's affordable for the people that are in the town. And a lot of the people in town are getting older. So it'd be great if something like this could accommodate people with mobility problems, because there's a lot of people up on the hills here that want to stay in town, but may not be able to afford their homes that they're in, or may not be as mobile in the coming years. So it's another thought for you to think of.
Thank you very much. Other comments or input in person or online? Yes, come on up.
Hi, Kevin Hoffman. I'm kind of thinking along the same lines as Joe Camerata in terms of home ownership and starter homes. I feel like it would be a good opportunity for like tiny homes. It wouldn't have quite the same density as like a 30 or 40 unit apartment building, but just eyeballing the lot, it looks like you could put maybe a dozen, 15 or 20 like very small homes that would be affordable as like starter homes, and have an actual opportunity for home ownership instead of just renting forever.
Thank you very much. Was that a hand, Ann? Or, oh yes, please come on up.
Yeah, sit here?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Great. I'm Bob Fanuc. I live down on Randall Street. I also lived through the 51 South Main Street long haul. Take that from an idea to a project now under construction. There was a lot of dispute about what exactly affordable housing meant. And there was different, what was going to be built and who was going to build it. Those were all things that were the subject of a great deal of back and forth. And at the end of the day, everybody in town who cared about it enough to come here to vote, came here to this room and voted in favor of affordable housing over 200 to 40, I think was the final vote or something like that. I mean, people recognize that this is a critical need for the region. And there's people who need the housing, there's businesses on Main Street that need the customers. So I'm 100% in favor of it, even though it's within I'll be able to see it from my house. It used to be a nice lawn, you know, or a parking lot anyway. But it's necessary. We have to do it.
Thank you.
Thank
Other folks? We have 10 minutes again. This is your time. We asked about next steps and we can speak to them, but we're certainly going to distill everything we've heard here tonight, plus our own input in terms of defining that and talking more about it. But yeah, open floor if anyone else has other things.
You gonna make another comment?
Yeah, come on up.
Yes, sir. Just to follow up, on my concerns there from the return on investment. So I called Chris Palermo. There's several people in this room who know Chris, used to own the funeral home across the road. He was former select board member here in Waterbury for a number of years. Now he's a select board member in Morrisville. He moved up there intentionally to get away from rising costs here in Waterbury and found out that, he must have dragged it with him when he went up there, because now he's contemplating living part-time in Florida and part-time here to try to get away from some of those tax burdens. But I called him before I was headed into the State House here a few weeks ago to ask him, and if anybody's been in Morrisville lately, they've seen all these new structures going up everywhere. I mean, it's becoming a metropolis up there. And I asked him if all that construction, that new economic development has moved the needle at all. He said we had 3 budgets die on the vine last year because nobody wants to spend any extra money to try to improve the town. Taxes continue to go up, and even with those new structures, it's not making a difference. So those are the types of things that I'm concerned about, to make sure that we just don't keep going backwards from a tax perspective here in town, because obviously they're turning the town into a much more congested area, burdening municipal services and whatnot, and it's not making a difference. So just thought I'd let you know that.
Thank you. Other comments? Anyone online? Anyone in the chat? I can't see. It's quite blurry.
No, I think we've addressed the chat, I believe.
Awesome. Any other online in the room? Yes, please.
So I'm Beth Ann Mayer. I share the house with Bob Finucane. I think that we need to look at this as citizens of the state, as well as citizens of the town, and look at what's driving our expenses as a state. And what's driving our expenses as a state is education, healthcare, corrections, and homelessness. Putting people in homes reduces all of those costs. And those are costs that we bear as citizens of the state. We can't do much about them as citizens of the town, but we can make decisions like this that will house more people and reduce all of those other root causes of rising taxes. Thank you.
Anyone else? We have 6 minutes. I recognize a good deal of you, but again, just saying, if you'd like your comments publicly on the record with regards to this project, it's not your only opportunity. We promise there will be more. That's the whole goal, but here.
When I think about 51 Main Street, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think roughly it's $650,000 a unit. And I'm just not understanding the goal line and what we think we can do as a town under the property tax and now a little bit of local option tax income to really make a difference with this one. I'm not sure how we pay for it. Property taxes are a serious burden. And I just think it needs to be factored in.
This one's from me, not from the person I work for. I think we could have both, right? That's why I asked about the timeline. Is there a possibility of subletting 2 acres? That's less than an acre. How many places is that gonna be?
26.
26 places and less than an acre, 2 acres. If the town buys it, we'd be looking to sell a 2-acre lot? Or could we do something to it? I hate to pay for paper. I'm the first person saying, don't do a study, because you're paying for paper. But, so if someone does a study, let's say, internally, and says that the demand is such, the demand is also this, and we do something, in the middle. Is that a possibility of subletting a 2-acre lot? And the town would then look at, because I think to Harry's point, I think some of that cost was because we went for a non-for-profit my understanding, right? The market brings those costs down a little bit. So if you sold it, and you sold it in a subdivision type arrangement, is that a possibility or a lot like that?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Last call, anyone who hasn't had a chance to weigh in, and then again, we'll talk about when we do this again as we get more detail. Anyone on the board?
I'll weigh in. I've heard a lot of comments about starter homes and home building and folks who live on Randall Street. And when I think of this lot in particular, I don't think of starter homes or houses as it is in the floodplain. As far as building modern apartment buildings and multi-unit housing, when designed in areas that are temperamental, usually the housing doesn't start until the 2nd floor. So as far as this property is concerned, it's optimal for development with multiple units and not just single family homes. That's my comment.
Mike, did you also have a hand there?
To me, someone who's been in the housing industry for probably close to 40 years, I do believe that what we're gonna wind up seeing with this project is we need to look at all proposals and weigh the benefits of whatever proposals they are. That could talk about the economics, because again, I'm all for, I did a lot of work in the affordable housing industry, and it's really good. You know, there's a lot of people who spread wrongdoings about affordable housing. You know, some people will say it's low-income housing. There have been plenty of studies that show that affordable housing projects have actually increased the demographics of an area versus decrease the demographics of an area. I think if a project's designed the right way, it can enhance a community. But I think ultimately we have to look at if we put some sort of potential options out as to what we're going to get in return. We may look at, it may not be affordable housing. It may be something of a middle to upper middle income housing. You know, development in the next few years is changing. We're going to see with, you know, what the political climate, affordable housing is going to be very difficult to develop. So we just may have to look at what alternatives are before us and what best suits our community.
Any other comments? Any other board members for Roger, Jeff, and I? All right. Well, in general, thank you, everyone. I just want to appreciate, I know it's a lot to come up and this is literally the hot seat, so apologies, it's for the audio. And just say, again, we named this in preliminary. I think at a minimum, again, we all are talking about what we've heard here tonight. We're gonna have time at future meetings to digest that, to talk about priorities, to talk more about process. So we have something more clearly outlined in terms of coming back to folks with more specifics for input when we get there. But thank you all for, again, weighing in tonight. And then I also will just say, for transparency, we have executive session on our agenda tonight for real estate. It is for real estate that is currently municipally owned. It is not about this parcel. So I just wanted to acknowledge for everyone, that's what that is, and it's not about this. All right. With that, our next item is municipal and regional board and commission appointments. On our last meeting agenda, we did a number of appointing folks to boards and committees. This is some follow-up items, in particular specifically for regional things. I put a sheet on the website and board members have copies. Just will name, we still have an open spot on the Conservation Commission, the Recreation Commission, and the Tree Board. Tom and I have not received any applications for those, but if you know folks, we are still looking. And we have 2 remaining spots on the Housing Task Force. And Lamson, who previously served on the task force, was open to continuing again. So we as a board have an option to appoint her if we would like to do that. Anyone want to make a motion on that? Roger?
Alyssa, this is Amy. I just wanted to comment that the Conservation Commission does not have any vacancies.
Thank you, Amy. I even checked the minutes for this meeting and I must have got it wrong. So we filled all the spots. Thank you, Amy.
We did, yeah.
Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll move to nominate M. Lanson for the Housing Task Force.
For a 1-year term and awesome. Is there a second?
Second.
They tied, but I heard Tori first. So motion by Roger, second by Tori, support M. Lanson to the Housing Task Force. Is there any further discussion? Right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'll abstain because I'm on the Housing Task Force. And then this next collection is other municipal appointments and regional appointments. So Tree Warden Mike Lociavo has served as that as the past year, would like to continue if we're willing to appoint him. Animal Control Officer, we don't have anyone. Tom Lights has served in the interim. But again, those are things we typically reformalize any year. If anyone would like to make motions in that respect.
I think it begs the question, does anyone want to be the animal control officer?
Please. It's a great job.
What's it at? Thank you.
What's the term of office for the tree warden?
So I went back in minutes to the Shepelak Lodge Speak era, and I believe we appointed for 1 year ending April 30th. Roger?
I'll nominate Mike Lashavo for a 1-year term as tree warden.
Second.
Motion by Roger, second by Mike. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right. Animal Control Officer, did we see any takers?
He said she was interested in a dog collar.
Your pet registration fees paid for?
Yeah, dog licenses were due April 1, but still just pay Karen, please, everyone. Does anyone want to make a motion to reformalize Tom, though he's been serving in the role?
I move to reappoint Tom Lights to animal control officer.
Thank you very much.
Is it fun when your boss does that in public? Is there a second? We had a motion by Kane, second by Roger. Any comments for Mr. Lights? So sorry.
Register your dogs. The comment I'll make is when people call me about animals, my general strategy is to say, if you've got an animal that's not registered that's causing problems, I'm busy and I have much higher priorities, so I will simply write you tickets. If you don't fix it quickly, and 99% of the time that works. So I'm not a nice guy in this role, but it seems to work for me. And the select board hasn't gotten complaints yet to my knowledge. I'm gonna keep up with that strategy.
And it's gonna look really good on your resume.
Right.
Other comments on this? I Excellent interview. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you for continuing to serve. All right, and then regional appointments, these are not the town of Waterbury per se, but regional entities we're a member of and then have the ability to appoint folks to. One of which is the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. I spoke with Doug Greason. He has served in this role. He is interested in continuing to serve. So that would be a one-year appointment. I will do these as a batch and note that Mike is here. And we also, that organization also has a transportation advisory committee where after 30 years, you too can get a municipal bridge if you advocate via that committee. So Mike has agreed as an enormous asset, I will say, to Waterbury to continue to serve. He is sometimes unable to attend, so we have the ability to appoint an alternate. And Doug is interested and willing in serving in that role as someone who knows the staffers of that organization as well.
Okay.
So depending on the board's interest, we would have the ability to appoint again Doug as for a year as commissioner, and then Mike on the advisory committee with Doug as the alternate.
I move to reappoint Doug Greason as our representative on the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission.
There a second? Second. Motion by Kane, second by Tori. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, and then we have the Transportation Advisory Committee. Mike, you're here. Do you want to say anything? No pressure, but since you're at the meeting tonight.
I enjoy representing the town at that. I found that my expertise at AOT has allowed me to share a lot of that with the other members of the other towns. So that's been a value. I guess I'll say that there are some shortages, some towns that are not appointing people. And we sometimes don't get quorums in order to do the work of the committee. So we're starting to work on that now to try to get these towns to have representatives, but it is a problem for the region.
Are there towns that we need to be putting pressure on?
I would hope that it can be done by that committee or by the representative or the folks that are on the regional planning commission. And I told them that I would volunteer to make calls to some of these towns myself. So hopefully we can get that straightened out and not miss quorums. So.
Mike, with your appointment, is there reason to believe that we could get another bridge in another 30 years?
Well, actually, we were asked to provide 2 town highway bridge projects to the region for them to prioritize. So I worked with Public Works and road commissioner to come up with those choices, and we submitted those to the region about 2 months ago. So any day now with the bridges.
Excellent.
Roger.
I move to nominate Mike Hedges as the advisor to the Regional Planning Commission Transportation Advisory Committee.
Excellent. Is there a second? All right, motion by Roger, second by Tori. Any further discussion? Mike?
I think we should contact Ben and Jerry's to have them provide a few gift certificates to get them, those other towns who can't get members.
Right.
Yes. I am here appointing commissioners and vice president.
Exactly.
So we need to amend that to include appointing Doug as an alternate.
You could do that, or we could make another motion after.
Friendly amendment to add Doug Greason as an alternate to this committee.
I'll accept the friendly amendment.
All right, as friendly amended, we have Mike Hedge as the committee member with Doug as the alternate. Any discussion on this?
Thank you for serving.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, and feel free to bring it back to our other member towns that at least we got it on the agenda. Thank you. All right, and Mad River Valley Resource Management Alliance. We have a board member there. Alec Tuscany has done this for the past couple of years, willing and interested to continue to serve if we so nominate him.
I make a motion to reappoint Alex Tuscany for the position of Man River Valley Resource Management Alliance Board Member.
Is there a second? Motion by Mike, second by Tori. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And last on this list of regional entities, it is now Northeast Kingdom and Central Vermont Fiber with CV Fiber when we in Waterbury first joined. We can have a delegate on the Board of Commissioners. Christopher Schenk took over after Linda Gravel was and then resigned. So Chris is our member. He said he's willing to serve, but he also, if other people are willing to serve, this is another one where we can have an alternate and re-advertise. So he was willing to be reappointed with the pitch that we should also get it out to the public.
I've moved to appoint Christopher Schenk to the Northeast Kingdom and Central Vermont Fiber Governing Board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Tori, second by Kane. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that concerns the various board and committee appointments. Again, still a couple of holdouts. So Tom, we can still have those on the website for other folks.
And I had one person interested in the tree board meet with me today, so hopefully in 2 weeks, there'll be one more person.
Great. So it sounds like some tree board potentially on the horizon for next meeting. Awesome. And you can probably stop the share so we can see Zoom. Next up, though, we'll call on you because we have flood mitigation and FEMA buyout updates. Again, we know we have a number of grants we've approved at various meetings. So Tom, I know you have some updates on the status of those and then as well as what we're considering for approval.
Yes, last meeting I wasn't here, but the town select board authorized applying for an advanced assistance grant, and that would be for the broader flood hydrology study that was submitted today. There's a board that meets in a couple of weeks, and I hope to have some input as to whether they recommend that it be advanced to the federal government for funding. Finally, after a long time, we have FEMA buyout amounts for the first time where properties have been appraised and the property owners have been given that number. And so the 33 North Main Street, which is the large property right across from Town Hall, that property owner now has an appraised number and can react. 36 and 40 Union Street also have those numbers, and both property owners have indicated to me that they are happy with the appraisals. So we have 3 properties that are moving forward. Additionally, just this past week, 35 North Main Street, which is the other vacancy, was approved for a buyout, as was 21 Elm Street and as was 1930 US Route 2. So that would be 6 properties in total that have been approved. 3 have reached the appraisal stage. I'm told now for the properties that have been approved that it's a solid 3+ months before an appraisal is done and given to the owners, at which point they can say yes or no. I'm also told for the properties that have been appraised that it is minimum 3, likely 6 months to actually close. After the closing, I don't yet have a timeline for the actual property demolition, but we're talking 2026, I am sure. So there's some headway on the buyout program. I also want to talk about the River Trails and Conservation Assistance Program. Dana Allen has been hired by the town to do some assistance in seeking flood grants and putting some of those connections together. And Dana scheduled a meeting with Pat Moulton, who's the recovery officer for Central Vermont, and some federal officials that were in town. And there's a program through the National Park Service called the River Trails and Conservation Assistance Program. It is free to us. It simply needs us to indicate our interest. And what that gives us is it gives us technical assistance through the form of federal government staff that are a combination of folks that are planners or some landscape architects or some engineers in the mix, but they can help us, I think, do something pretty valuable for the Randall Meadow. One, they can look at it from the perspective of recreation and also conservation, and they can It can help us with some future visioning. We've been focused pretty heavily on getting the property and then getting some funding for a capital project, but we haven't focused very heavily on how it might look in the end. And so this is where we can get some free assistance from the federal government. And from my perspective, I don't see a reason to say no to that. I'm happy to have the help.
How much would you be asking for?
No money. All it is we're enrolled in the program and the staff at National Park Service help us with that really the visioning part of it.
Questions or comments on this? I will say for folks who have received the appraisal, how long is that good for? Like, what's their window to say yes, no, maybe start shopping with a number in mind, all of that type of thing?
I believe 90 days. There is a process if they think it's too low by which they can challenge it, but they then have to pay for an appraisal on their own, but the standard is 3 months.
But I'm saying after 3 months, they're no longer eligible to take that appraisal amount, or they have to get it reappraised?
I don't know 100%. I've looked at those contracts, but they're not simple. But I believe what they're asking for at first order is to take 3 months and say, yes, we agree, or no, we don't.
Other questions or comments, Roger?
Tom, do you need a motion from the board to enroll in the Rivers Trails and Conservation Assistance Program?
Yes.
I'll move that we enroll in the Rivers Trails and Conservation Assistance Program.
Second. Motion by Roger, second by Tori to take up the free offer of River Trails and Conservation Assistance and support. Is there any further discussion?
You know, I like free stuff.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Other questions from the board or the public, particularly on this item? I know we often have questions about updates and status. Harry.
Properties that might take this litigation file stuff, are they going to become owned by the town? Who's taking fee ownership of these properties?
Ultimately, the town.
So they'll be taken fully off the tax rolls, and are there, is there development potential in the future for these properties?
No,
basically that's the end.
They are open space in perpetuity. You cannot put impervious surface on the properties. So the interesting piece to me is, if I think about the 2 homes on Main Street near Town Hall, one of which has been appraised, and the bottom 4 on Union Street, 2 have been approved for buyouts and 2 are waiting to hear. So a fair amount of open space when you assemble those parcels that I think there could be an interesting community conversation about what happens there. Not being able to have impervious surface simply means you can't develop them, but I think there's some interesting amenities that could happen there despite that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions or comments? And I'll just say, knowing that it would be permanently undeveloped was part of the board's consideration around what ones at various points were approved to be potentially eligible for the FEMA buyout. And Tom hates when we talk about legislation in progress, but there are proposals around up to 5-year full, 10-year half, some payment of municipal taxes, particularly for towns candidly more impacted than Waterbury, places like, say, Plainfield, where a huge amount of their grant list is being considered for buyouts, and that's really challenging for those local officials. So nothing final yet, but it is being discussed.
Is the destruction cost the town's responsibility?
It is not, as it stands now, and this should not change, because I believe the money's been set aside. Normally, there would be a 25% cost to the whole thing. And that's a bitter pill to swallow. I bet people ask me, why weren't there buyouts after Irene? And the answer is, you've got to pay 20% of the purchase price and the demolition cost to reduce your grand list. It's a tough proposition. Losing your grand list alone can be tough, but the fact that the state is covering that 25% is a big deal.
Any other flood mitigation type questions?
No, Melissa. Well, I'm assuming based on what I've witnessed and probably other people have witnessed,
those properties are by a percentage higher, prone to flooding than, say, this Stanley Hall.
Yes,
Stanley
quite a bit.
Hall area. I'm just thinking if we can potentially take and turn that Stanley Watson Hall area into a living space that, and as I had mentioned before, somebody like myself or another residential contractor could go in and tear those buildings down and erect something that would be suitable for occupancy, just having the flood area down below as open space. You know. It's a shame to see it taken off the ground list.
By participating in this program, there's gonna be no more building there.
No more building there.
So that's the trade-off.
Other questions? Okay, we'll continue on further grant updates, but across a variety of topics. We have municipal planning grant, downtown transportation fund and better connections program. And just wanted to have time on the agenda to publicly share this, which of those we have and haven't received and what next steps looks like. Do you mind starting, Tom?
Sure, let me start with the good news. Downtown Transportation Fund, we had applied for a grant to pave Bidwell and add some sidewalks in that area and add some of the period lighting that we have on Main Street. And some signage for the businesses. Perhaps a speed hump, not a speed bump, but my public works director ensures me a speed hump would be more one we received. And we applied for $200,000. The total project was envisioned at about $250,000, but some of that, the 50 that we would spend above the grant, some of that substantial amount could be staff time. We did receive that grant. We were just notified, I believe, Friday. So that's great news. I don't think there's going to be any real construction action this season, but we're on our way. Town had also applied for what's called the Better Connections Grant, and that was a study in Waterbury Center. And that was really focused on pedestrian improvements in Waterbury Center, focused around the triangle and the surrounding streets. I don't take credit for that. Duncan McDoodle and Katie Gallagher wrote the grant. I just submitted it. But we were awarded $97,500 for that grant. There's a local match of $7,500. We have a kickoff meeting for that this week, so there'll be more on that coming up. Relatively soon. It's going to take some time to get a grant contract and get a consultant selected, but that'll, I think, be a topic of conversation later this year as the winter comes. Then the final piece, I don't know if I should save the worst for last or should I go with it, but we had applied for a municipal planning grant in the amount of $30,000. The budget had assumed that we would be awarded this grant, so we budgeted the money in, money out, and there was a process here by which we had $50,000 of local option tax funds, so town money that was going to be used to support the planning commission update on the town plan. We'd also hope to get $30,000 in grant funds and have a total pot of 80, and some of that could be devoted to the Conservation Commission, which also wanted to do work that would, we think, assist in the town plan. We didn't get the grant, so we are simply allocating the 50 to the planning commission because the town plan is a major statutory priority. So the Conservation Commission will have to seek other options, whether that's grants or whether we'll be back at it in the budget process soon enough. But in the end, we were awarded about $300,000 in the past week, so it wasn't a bad week.
Questions from folks on the board? I had one on the downtown transportation fund. We have pedestrian infrastructure there, right, for sidewalk cross?
Yes, correct. We did include a crosswalk there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, didn't mention that.
Yeah.
And flashing lights.
Yes.
Which is great.
And there's one from.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Billy.
Do we know why we were rejected for the municipal planning grant?
I haven't had a conversation about it yet. What I've noticed is that municipal planning grants of late just haven't, the state has not been super interested in funding town plan updates. for whatever reason, we were to say the same, we can try again, perhaps for phase 2 of bylaws, but don't have a great explanation, but I've just noticed of late, this cycle, they did not award town plan updates in general.
Other questions or updates from folks on the board on any of those?
When's the kickoff?
I don't have that yet, but I'll let you know soon enough.
So kickoff coming soon for Better Connections, which is up in Waterbury Center around the Triangle. Denton Transportation Fund, you said it sounds like potentially not this construction season, or?
I think it's gonna take some time to secure consultants. It's essentially funding for capital and some signage, so I think it's all gonna take some time. And I know that Bill Woodruff has struggled with the lighting. So that's also gonna take, I'm guessing, a few years to get all that pulled together.
Thank you. And then again, just noting that the planning commission, Billy's here, but is prioritizing the municipal plan update. And so we were allocating the local option tax money from the budget entirely to them, not able to include the conservation commission, in part because we had plans on hopefully them getting this grant. Any other grant funding next step questions? All right. So next up on the agenda, we had follow-up conversation select board recommendations for school board appointment and ethics concerns. So for the listen opening monologue that folks can follow up on. So we did not have folks run for all of the seats on the Harvard Unified Union School District Board. The select board has the ability to make recommendations. We made 2 recommendations at our April 7th meeting. The school board subsequently met and appointed folks. For the folks from Waterbury, they appointed one person who was one who the select board recommended and one other candidate. Tori was present at that meeting. We received comments on public forum with folks with concerns about that. So this agenda item is in light of that. I guess other follow-up questions we've received more specifically have been around the ethics complaint process. For our regular meeting attendees who have been here, we do have a form on the town website that anyone can fill out. We have not received the filled out ethics complaint form, so this is really an agenda item of us wanting to have time to address it as the board. But we would ask if someone wants to fill out the form, you're welcome to, but as of before this meeting, we hadn't received one. And then I guess I'll turn it over to Tom, who talked to the town attorney with regards to just us getting a baseline and then have time for board member comments.
Let me just open a couple files here real quick.
Thanks, Fish. Is this your kiddo?
Yeah, one of them. Yeah, it wasn't a bad fish, yeah.
And everyone's enjoying Tom's kid with the fish.
The privilege of being the manager, I can put whatever I want up there. Let me just share my screen here for the folks online.
Folks enjoying again. Yeah.
So I just want to talk briefly about the Municipal Code of Ethics, and this was passed by the state of Vermont and became effective January 1st. We have a little bit of work yet to do. We have to formally adopt procedures for dealing with ethics complaints that may arise. I have been designated as the ethics liaison to the State Ethics Commission. I have been designated informally as the person to take ethics complaints. I just want to talk real quickly about a couple of general items related to questions that have come to me and issues that arose at the last meeting. First thing I want to point out is the first page and a half or 2 pages of this is definitions, and most of them are not super important. What is important is the conflict of interest definition here. Because this ordinance, essentially, this law derives from this definition. And when you read the conflict of interest definition carefully, it mentions the municipal officer's immediate family or household, business associates. It also specifically says outcomes particular matters before the officer that's in conflict with their duties. So in general, I've had a few people say to me, since I've been here, different conflict concerns. And what I say to people and what I would say going forward is there's a definition of a conflict. And so if someone raises a conflict of interest concern, it should be something that they believe is occurring that is not in accordance with this definition. So it's not a general term. We all think of conflict our own way. There is in fact a definition in the law, and I think that's important. The other piece that's important is the definition talks about interests that are not greater than that of any other person. So people have said to me over the years, a certain person on an elected board can vote for a matter because it might impact them personally. And housing could be one, for example. I've heard people say before this board that perhaps certain people should not vote on issues related to housing because of their home ownership status. And in general, I would call that something that is no one here has one interest greater than the other with regards to housing. We all benefit in the same way from those issues. So I just want to point that out briefly. I also want to note, going down into the ordinance a little bit, that there are procedures here and there are specific infractions noted in the ordinance that people should read before an allegation is made. I think that's hugely important to become familiar with this. It also talks about that a conflict or the appearance should be determined from the perspective of a reasonable individual with knowledge of the relevant facts. So again, when someone makes a statement related to the appearance of a conflict, it should be thought of in the context of the original definition. So if I do something you don't like, it's not necessarily a conflict. I would advise you to read the definition first before suggesting that there's an appearance of a conflict. Going down just a little bit further, we have actual prohibited conduct. And I think these are really cut and dry: directing unethical conduct, preferential treatment, misuse of position, and the list goes on. For municipal officials, whether you're appointed or elected, whether you're in the select board or development review board, again, bear in mind, this is only prohibited conduct with respect to your official duties. And so it does not apply if you're addressing another board. It does not apply if you sit on the board of the Friends of the Waterbury Reservoir. You are acting as Mike Bard in that instance. You are not acting as a select board member. So I just want to clarify that for folks. And I just want to really quickly then talk about the town's conflict of interest policy. And I've got to now bring up my desktop again. Sorry. I hate doing this in real time.
Get to see the fish gun. It really is a nice fish.
So let me share the screen one more time. I'll get better at it eventually. I'm the animal control officer, not the Zoom officer. So this conflict of interest policy is the town's policy. It is not an ordinance, it is policy. And I want to point out one thing that I think is critical. So the state ordinance is actually less broad than the town's policy. The town has a much more expansive definition of conflict of interest. It's not business partners, it's not your immediate family, it's essentially your grandparents, grandkids, siblings, aunts, all those individuals. I think that's an important distinction to make. People should know that. In fact, the town's policy, I think, has been stronger than the new state ethics law for as long as I can find records of. So we've always had, I think, a pretty solid policy here. I believe in 2 weeks we will have on the agenda an agenda item where hopefully we can talk about finalizing the complaint process and how someone might respond. One thing I would encourage the select board to think about, I really think if a complaint is made, whether it's an ethics complaint or about a conflict of interest, and the two are always intertwined, I really think that complaint should be made in writing with the person's name. So I'd really encourage you to think about that, but that's my recommendation to you. The second thing I would really recommend is that we should not accept complaints that don't specifically cite what area of law or policy were violated. I think the individual making the complaint has got to take the time, it doesn't take hours, to read the policy and read the law and say exactly what was violated. Because to me, it's a complaint is a serious matter. If someone makes an ethical complaint against me, it is my professional career. So I would hope that person takes more than a minute to write an email and says, I think you're a bad guy because of this reason, but actually looks at the action and looks at the law and the policy. And that's all I wanted to say as an overview. Hopefully we can finalize the procedure in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Tom. I'll open it up first for board member comments on this. Does anyone have any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, I apologize for any confusion my actions may have caused, and will be more careful and diligent in disclosing my role as select board in the future.
Are there any other board comments? Any other public comments?
How often do you guys go through that code, the policies? Basically,
Policies are readopted annually.
I'm sorry?
Annually.
Oh, thank you. Any question?
So I've had some time to think about this and to some degree calm down about it. This isn't blood in the water for me. Am I upset about it? Absolutely. For a couple of different reasons. So my first question to you, Tom, is if I were to file the paperwork, should that even bother to take place until the rest of this is ironed out?
You can do that tonight. That's up to you.
I think there's a percentage of the public that feels a bit slighted that a vote transpired. Majority rule. But that didn't set well enough for one of our select board members. I feel, you know, I'm upset for the other board members that actually voted in favor. And it wouldn't have mattered who it was, but it was a 3-2 vote, majority rules in my world. You can't always win every battle. That's what politics is about. The path to progress is compromise. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I'm upset for the board members that their vote was taken for granted. I'm upset for the people that felt that they lost an opportunity for some balance in representation at the school board level. And the school board doesn't come out of this with clean hands by any stretch. And I hope that the voters take that into consideration at the next election. To have a scale tipped heavily in one direction, I don't think serves any of us with respect and fairness. So I'll be probably speaking to you at some point, sit down and have a conversation as to whether I want to further this thing or not. But I appreciate your apology tonight. Being a educated attorney, I just expected a little bit more, from you. So thanks for everybody's consideration.
Any other comments? Sorry, I didn't see you in the room.
I hadn't really planned to speak about this. There has been a lot of discussion with people in the community about this. And I think that there probably will be some formal complaints that will be lodged. As Chris mentioned, we're not talking about just any person that might not know better. Tori has a law degree. And if I recall correctly, I believe, Tom, you were sometimes asking Tori for some advice or help in actually constructing our ethics code. Is that not correct?
Not the ethics code, that's state law, the conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest, okay. And I will say also to what Tom said, we're not saying someone's a bad guy or a bad gal. But we do hold our elected officials, to a higher standard than some other people that we might. And I just think this is kind of laughable that it could just be, as Tori said, we were just confused. I think it was very clear what happened. And I think it's really inexcusable. And I'm really appalled that you, with the education that you have, would do something that was so blatantly rude to somebody. So whether it fits exactly in the way that the law is written, or whether it's just the way it's perceived, it hasn't gone over well. And I'm just disappointed, and I'm disappointed with what you claim to be an apology. I don't think that was an apology at all, to say that you're sorry for the confusion. People aren't confused. It was clear what happened, and I do hope that some formal complaints are lodged and that we see better from our board.
Maybe on topic, maybe not. Hopefully it is. So trust is very important, right? We all agree to that. So it's very, very, very important that the public can trust this board. It's very important. So I think that part of that is self-policing as a board. So if you, again, I know that I kind of went back, looked at the tape. You guys know I watch things after the fact. It is disturbing what transpired. I don't think there was malice intent, but trust is very important. So I would encourage this board to talk, perhaps have the school board chair in for a meeting. Not about this incident, but about way forward. Because I think it's very important. We are the largest population in this school district, Waterbury. So what your board decided should have been carried by all the board. And that's all I'll say. So again, I would give you one book to perhaps read, because I read it a long time ago. It's a book called The Speed of Trust, right? Tremendous book, quick read. It's got some good lessons there.
If I may, I talked to Dr. Lightlight, the superintendent, last week, and what he said is his sense of the school board is they're deeply uncomfortable about making appointments too, and they also would prefer voters to write them. I haven't done a deep dive into the history, but my understanding is it's routine for Waterbury seats and other seats within the district to not be filled. Certainly, this is my third year through this process. It's happened every year. And I do know that my predecessor, when the district was created, said that 4 seats is too big for Waterbury. You will struggle with this issue, and he was correct. So in talking with the school superintendent, he suggested that perhaps a broader conversation about the underlying issue is not a bad idea, that the district now has existed for over a decade, and perhaps it's time to reconsider these processes, because they can be amended, that it requires action by the legislature, but.
Tom, I think it's gonna be decided for us. I mean, what's in the news is the board's gonna consolidate, and this won't be a factor perhaps in the future. So it just, again, I didn't want to speak specific to the situation. Like I said, I went back to it. But there are decisions made on that board that are impacting this town, that need to carry the weight of the burden of, everybody kind of talks about our taxes, right? I would love to see paved roads, Park Row, we're gonna do Bidwell, beautiful, Railroad Street, right? We're not doing things that are basic functions of a municipality because we're afraid, I'm sorry, afraid is a powerful word. We're concerned about the cost or burden upon the taxpayer. That board carries more cost than any of you guys here. Sorry, it's just fact, right? So I think when you make a decision about a board member and the public hears that, they're thinking this is a done deal. And then when there's a decision made by the school board that's different, absolutely within their purview of doing it. But I think kind of the foul here was whether or not all candidates were considered. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I just go back to the grounding of trust. I agree. I think some of it is fatigue. You're talking to a person that won't be on a board for that very reason of fatigue. If you get to the point where you're over your bandwidth, you're not performing optimally for that board or for your person. So again, that's decisions people will make to be on boards or not. I just would implore you to self-police at times. I think you do a great job. A lot of times I'll see if people recuse themselves and say, hey, I don't think I should vote it. I think you've done it a few times. I kind of was like, oh, why would he recuse? Then I understood it, right? So it's, again, I'm watching it after the fact. I'm a history guy. I like to see that. Anyway, so whatever comes to this, I do think there's a formal process. I read through that. So perhaps that will be done, but in the interim, as you have these meetings and you guys, it's almost 9 o'clock, right? These meetings last a long time. You listen to the public. I think the trust factor is so critical. And this is one where I think it took a bit of a dip. So the repair strategy thing is self-police. Try to figure that out. Self-police, but also board police, right? If you have an executive session, you can talk through some things. Perhaps that's the right form, but just what I see it. Actually.
Yeah, Mal, I didn't see you online. You're behind me. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I just feel the need to comment that I think the board and Tom laid out a very clear policy of what is and is not a conflict of interest. And I can't help but feel that some of this reaction feels outsized compared to what actually happened. And I think there's something that I find disheartening about the sort of inferred questioning of a board member's qualifications and education. And I just find that very disappointing in some of these statements that have been made. And so I would just hope that the board, using their taxpayer funded time to review any formal complaint that comes in, within the guidelines of our policy. And, if at first blush, it doesn't seem to fall under the, definition of a conflict of interest, that we move on to other important matters to the town and not get bogged down in, issues that have been adjudicated under this policy. It seems pretty cut and dry to me. So I hope the, board spends their time accordingly. Thank you.
Any other notes? Were you getting a city? Yeah. Sandy, say that.
I guess the only thing I want to say was, as with the conflict of interest, question I brought up before, and the perception, I guess all I wanted to say was just because you can do it, doesn't mean you should sometimes. So I just hope that the board learns from this lesson and, it doesn't happen again where anybody has to question it. You should know not to, if it has a perception, then it could be brought up. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sandy. Any other notes?
Can I follow up with one more comment to respond to Tom?
Yep, I'm gonna say 2 minutes, absolute max, ideally.
So I did speak to one of our legislators about this issue. And apparently at one point before we created the district, appointees were done by the select board. And we talked about it and both agreed that it needs to go back to that, but based on Tom Gore's point, the redistricting process and how that all plays out. I did talk to the representative about that. I feel that you're gonna end up with the same scenario potentially, even if you redistrict to, down to 5 districts or 17, whatever it is, wherever they land their feet, there's still gonna be issues, I think, within those larger districts that are gonna require representation. And you know as well as I do that people aren't standing in line to serve for those positions. So I'm hoping, and I'm gonna keep my eye on the ball with this thing, and so will the representative, and hopefully they'll do the right thing. Because the towns need to be represented by people in the town, not by 6 other towns weighing in on who should represent the different town.
Right, anything else? We're just past when we have this agenda item. All right. Last business item before next agenda is select board and municipal manager informational updates. This is information sharing, particularly from those of us who are liaisons to other boards and committees. Things that need further discussion will be discussed at next select board meeting. But is anyone who wants to start with any updates?
The recreation committee met this past week and talked about the proposed municipal building and went through the process of how they got to where they are over the past year, because there's a couple of new members there. But they have a pretty good, they looked at what Colchester has done and looking at a scaled down version of that that fits what they prioritize in terms of the needs. And so we'll be hearing more about where they're going with this and how we propose to fund it.
Thanks. Any other updates? What's happening May 17th?
Yes, May 17th, we have the community volunteer fair, which is being organized by Revitalizing Waterbury and the Town of Waterbury Recreation Department. We now have 25 different organizations, volunteer-based organizations that will be represented there. It'll be going from 1 until 3 at the Brookside Primary School. And we're encouraging everyone that would be interested in volunteering or is already volunteering to participate.
Cory, do you have any updates?
Yeah, the tree board met. They're currently trying to figure out, debating, there's the emerald ash borer problem, and they're weighing the costs and benefits of immunizing trees, because that can be like an inch. I heard it's $10 per inch, so 30-inch tree would be like $300. But comparatively, taking down those trees if they've been infected is extremely costly and can range easily from $2,000 to $3,000 or more. So they're weighing how to best handle some of these, and they've been told that There's probably more trees infected in the back roads, so they're just trying to kind of come up with a good game plan. And then there's an Arbor Day Memorial Tree Planting happening May 24th at 1 p.m. at the, outside of the library.
And that's in memory of Steve Lotsford, the former municipal planner who also won a statewide award for his work supporting trees. Thanks, Tori. Any other?
Oh, yeah, right now.
Awesome. I'll jump across. Kane, any updates?
At our first meeting, natural disaster preparedness with our, brandy new coordinator. Danny Kelman. And the meeting went well. It was just, essentially intros and next steps. And information sharing. I look forward to our next meeting.
Do you anticipate any next steps for this board with regards to their work?
I don't foresee any requests being made in the next couple meetings.
Mike, any updates?
Not a lot. The DRB hasn't met for a while, but I'm going to their meeting this Wednesday. And the Conservation Commission is meeting a week from now, which I plan on attending that as well.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Housing Task Force, oops, sorry, question, yes.
I think that meeting's canceled, I think was it? That means so, something's changed.
David at the said, didn't mention that.
Maybe saved to make a trip. Thank you, audience participation. Housing Task Force, we're scheduled to meet next Thursday, but I don't have any updates since our last meeting. Tom, anything?
Yep, couple updates. First one, just at the start of this meeting, I got our third ever quarterly distribution of local option taxes. So the first one we got was for the third quarter of last year. That was 230,000. The second one we got was 238,000 for the fourth quarter. This one was about 201,000. That's lower, but on the other hand, that matches history because there's it simply matches the history. We typically collect in the third and fourth quarters 26.5% based on 10 years of data I've gotten. So we're actually on task. That number to me doesn't show that we've seen any decline yet from Canadian tourists or anything in general. So that's a good number. I was hoping for something in that range. Second thing is I had a meeting last week with a couple of state officials and the executive director of the Lemoyle Housing Partnership. Lemoyle Housing Partnership operates a homeless shelter in Hyde Park, and they are working with the state to operate a homeless shelter at the Armory. As it stands now, there's no substantive changes that would occur there, but the state would not be contracting with an out-of-state third party. There'd be a local nonprofit that in their region which is not super far, has a good record of operation, and I think that's a win for the community because I think challenges do arise. We'll have a better time working with a nonprofit with Vermont ties than a fly-by-night contractor who's doing it for a buck for now. So I think that's a win. They did indicate they will apply for a zoning permit. They understood the change of use permit issue we dealt with in the past. So that would likely be applied for in the next month because they want to operate it by this winter. And you submit a permit, takes some time to schedule, takes some time for the DRB to rule. And so I think they want to get that in relatively quickly. So I think there'll be more on that in the future when the permit application is submitted.
Question will go Roger and then Sandy and Harry.
I was just wondering, has there been any change in occupancy of the current operation of the shelter?
Winding it down, I don't know if it's zero quite yet.
And then Sandy and then
Just a
Harry.
quick question on the pilot program with the local option, the surplus. Have you heard any updates on whether or not they're gonna distribute that based on the local options tax towns or overall?
So just for context, the bill Sandy's referring to is commonly called the flood bill. Couple things happening in that bill. The first is under current law, when the taxes are collected, the state retains 30% that goes into pilot fund, which we get a pretty substantial amount from the state, and then the 70% comes back to us in form of taxes. Pilot fund is overfunded and has a nice surplus. And that's because increasingly cities and towns have been enacting local option taxes. So the proposal before the state, which I think has a good chance of passing, is the 70-30 ratio will become 75-25. That would net us about $60,000 a year. So nothing to scoff at. That's a great win if that passes. The surplus in the pilot fund has been paid for over the years by those communities with local option taxes. Ours is pretty new, and so if that surplus is allocated back to towns, I don't have the exact math on what might come to us, and it's up for debate, but we haven't put a lot into that fund. So I'm not anticipating a windfall there. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I kind of got the impression that they were talking about giving it to all the towns and not even just the ones that had done the local option tax. So I didn't know if there was anything there.
So they give the pilot is based on state property in your town. There has been, as long as I've been in Vermont and paying attention, some chatter about giving some sort of baseline appropriation to towns through the pilot fund. If they want to do that, that's great. I don't want them to reduce the pilot for Waterbury because it's 400 grand.
And Harry, you
I wondered if I can ask how it's gone this winter with the operation of the homeless shelter.
Not a single person in the community has called me with a complaint.
Repeat, please.
Not a single person has called me with a complaint. And to my knowledge, neither has the select board received any complaints. So I think it's gone perfectly fine.
And is it occupied, Tom?
It's being wound down for the summer. Just based on where the state is in the homeless population, it wouldn't shock me if they have a policy goal at some point to make it a year-round shelter. In fact, it'd surprise me if they didn't ever try to do that.
Thank you.
Any other updates for board members, Mike?
Just an update, maybe. I know we approved parking in the Methodist Church parking lot. I know I'm parked there right now, but there's no signage there, or unless I've missed something.
Make a donation on Sunday.
So
I'll say a Hail Mary.
We did not sign a lease.
Correct.
Okay. So
you can still park there informally, but we did not sign
Sign
a
on
agreement.
Okay. Be on Sunday.
Yeah.
there we go. Okay. Put something extra in the plan.
Right. Any other updates? If not, we can move to next meeting agenda. The one thing we have penciled in was, again, this, as has been brought up earlier, adoption of the formal ethics complaint procedure policy, just the who goes to what, where, when, how, wow. The other thing I have to propose is, we had previously discussed some of the housing program proposals, so there is another housing task force meeting, so I anticipate likely 2, if not 3 agenda items. Again, things we've talked about is a specific program proposal, specific uses of the housing trust fund, and other updates. Other items folks would like to see on our next agenda.
I'll listen.
Kane and then Mike.
I'll have most of the presentation done about policing expenses.
Releasing expenses from Kane, Mike.
Probably going to be with NQID, the Rotary. It's me. I have applied for our town permit, so we'll probably need to have a discussion of the safety plan, road plan that we do every year. With it coming up, I would say that would be a good day to have.
Great, and Tom mentioned maybe someone for tree board as well. Any other, Roger?
We invited the Vermont State Police a number of times, and they've been unable to attend. Suggest that we extend that invitation again.
Are you able to do that?
I can do that. I actually talked to the lieutenant on Friday, and he has been given a couple of transfers, and he's getting a bigger chunk of the recruiting class than they have in a long time. And so he's pretty happy that he's got 5 coming his way. is good for.
Five's big.
Five's really big.
Tell them to bring the good news here.
Give them a band.
No, that's not tomorrow, but it's happening over the next few months.
Great. Tom will reach out. I know there was sugaring constraints among many others previously.
It was kind of nice actually on Gulf Road to see them parked there the other day. I almost stopped and said, thank you.
Any other updates? Roger?
I had one, it may not be for next meeting, but, at town meeting, the people attending, voted in favor of the, in-person, town meeting. There were some others that, suggested we could, continue to look at some hybrid options to get more people participating. And we had a bit of a discussion, the following select board meeting. You had indicated that you're gonna talk with Susan Clark about what some options might be, and I was just wondering if there's any follow-up on that and whether that can be brought back up again.
Yeah, I did meet with her and I'm happy to share. Other items for the next meeting agenda? All right, if there's more, obviously folks can be in contact.
It's on, hand up, whatever.
Oh, sorry.
You add paving to the parking lot.
Yeah, is it not already on here?
I do
Paving.
believe.
Sidewalks.
We're very much a tourist town. If you come through South Main now, that road's really bad. Railroad Street's really bad. I don't know well, High Street's very bad. It would be nice to see what the plan is or the strategy. We can't do them all at once, understand it, but we're starting to see infrastructure issues.
Up the road in front of.
Yeah, very
Kane's
bad.
apartment is really bad.
And that's gonna be.
See, I didn't advocate for that part of the road.
Say, I don't. Every day.
I
Here we are.
advocate the other half. Getting your bangers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are speed bumps.
Yeah, they are.
Public input : paving, blowout attendance. All right, next.
Phone meeting down in the future, but I just
Appreciate
think
it.
we've got some challenges. It'd be nice to see some local option guys, frankly, going back. So, I mean, I know we did that part of stuff, so going all the way would be wonderful before these people receiving that kind of stuff, but. That's all, my 2 cents.
Thanks. Any other? All right, if not, we have executive session for real estate, not Stanley Watson. If someone on the board wants to make the motion.
Can do. I move to find the premature public knowledge of a real estate transaction would place the town of Waterbury at substantial disadvantage.
Is there a second? Second. Motion by Kane, second by Cory. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Everyone wanna enter?
I'm moving to enter executive